With me here today. And Yumi Connections is about connecting the dots to inspire collaboration and ignite creativity. So I hope this conversation does that for you today. So I'm going to let Rod introduce himself and explain to you why he's here about entrepreneurship.
Hello, world. My name is Rod Chappelle. I'm what I would call a serial entrepreneur.
Yes, he is.
Originally from Chattanooga, Tennessee. I live in Atlanta, Georgia now. And I've been an entrepreneur since 2001. So that is actually going on 17 years in January.
So I've known him for 10. So for the 7 years before that, he's been doing this thing. So let me tell you how I met him and why he's so important to me and why I feel like this conversation is going to be important to you. I actually am a marketing minor and I've been into marketing for a long time. This man is a trailblazer in marketing. I might be dating myself a little bit, but the Pantene Totally You tour, the Tide Family Reunion, and even up to recently now, the BET College Tour, these are things that he's kind of created and developed. And I was so intrigued by that, I tried to find him. And so I accidentally found him through a mutual friend, and we've been friends ever since. We have a connection because we think about things similarly. I think our first conversation was about strategy and how life kind of gives an information in blocks, and both of us kind of vibe off of connecting those dots and building things for people. So can you explain to them what that means to you?
Yeah. So the way I think is in a process. So it's almost from the end to the beginning. So if you can imagine a bunch of blocks or puzzle pieces scattered all over the place, and you know what the end looks like, but now you have to put those pieces together. And so in a business format, that's pulling different disparate pieces and putting them into one pie that you can then sell to someone in order to generate money.
Right.
So it's either a product or a service that you think that someone will buy, and eventually more people will buy and buy more and more of those, just so you can stay in business.
Right. So we were talking earlier about you got to have an end game. And so an entrepreneur without an end game isn't really an entrepreneur, right? Is that what we were saying?
Well, I use the equation: revenues minus expenses equal profit.
All the time.
And so you have to have a profitable business in order to stay in business. And so if you're thinking about the end in mind, it's enough dollars and profit so that you can maintain the quality of life that you want. And some people that's millions of dollars and more than that. Some people it's I have a family that I can take care of, and the business takes care of the family, and I may have some more dollars left on after that. So with the end in mind is what are you looking for, and then you build your business in order to satisfy that. And I've been in business almost 17 years, so it's a daily build that then ends up with weekly and then monthly and then annually. And so as you're loving what you're doing and you're generating revenue from what you're doing, that turns into profit. You can keep doing it.
Do you feel like you were driven by profit, or do you feel like you've been in this entrepreneurial space because you love of the game, right? So we talked about, is it really a love of the game, or is it who you are?
Yeah, I think originally it was the desire to have flexibility and take risks. So when I originally started this, I was single, and I could take a lot more risks. If I had to go back and start over, or sleep on a couch, sleep in my parents' bedroom, maybe they'll let me come back home for a while I was getting it off the ground. But the risk came in me trying to say what makes me comfortable. And so starting off with what makes me comfortable, I wanted to get a contract before I had actually left the working world. And so once I did that, I left to start the business, and I was just want to see how far I could keep going. And so it's still going, and since then I've started 5 or 6 other businesses that are vertically linked to the original business. And so,
Thus
some
the word
children enjoy.
serial, okay? 5 or 6
Yeah.
businesses linked to the original premise
Yep.
that all are revenue building modules. And so I wanted to piggyback off or hook on to one thing that you said, which was I wanted to have a contract before I left the working world.
Mhm.
And so this goes back to the blocks. So I know that you came from Procter & Gamble,
Mhm.
where you kind of got some insight onto the process of marketing, right? So the machine of marketing. But I think that as we were talking, you shared that there were some things they couldn't do, but you knew that you could do outside of that box. And so you took some of the information that you learned there and assembled it into the machine that those products as I was talking about. So can you talk a little bit about connecting the blocks in your position as an employee that led you to connect to entrepreneurship?
Yeah. So I was working at Procter and Gamble. I worked in marketing in the hair care division, and so I had interned. So the product that I worked on was Pert Plus shampoo.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I came back to Procter and Gamble and wanted to work on Pert Plus was because they were doing some things that I liked passionately. So you had sports, entertainment, multicultural marketing. I liked those things. So I asked specifically to go back on that brand so that I can work in those areas. And then I found that, within the marketing arena, I liked promotions. So
Bill likes promotions.
Yep, I like the idea of putting together something that could be a short-term, consumer-based initiative,
Okay.
and crafting that and putting it out there and letting people respond to it.
Okay.
And so that was my thing.
Yep, and you were good at it. You liked it. You created
and I did that multiple times while I was at P&G. And I would kind of go around and bring other people from their brands into my promotions.
Okay.
Actually did a promotion with the NBA, did a promotion with the NFL.
Mhm.
These are things that weren't being done at Procter & Gamble.
You were thinking out of the box, though, in the employee position.
Yes, which was good and bad.
Okay.
Because they like boxes.
Right. They need to check them. And
they need to check the boxes. And I was not a good stay in the box guy. But it also led me to understand what I liked about it. Okay. So while promotion might have been 20% of my job, I liked it so much that I wanted to make it 80% of my job.
Okay.
I still like the other things, but I like the promotional part.
He's a business guy, though. Like, he loves promotions, but again, the profit statement is a driver and an understanding of the architecture of a deal, right? So the art of the deal, you like that part too. So promotions may be where you got your energy, but I think it took some of your business sense to be able to create the machine called Grassroots Promotions, which is the name of his company.
So good promotions.
Right.
And good promotions are those that excite the people and make them buy something. So if you can excite them, make them buy them, you get a chance to go do that again.
Right.
And so I left P&G. I went to work for a sports and entertainment company where I was doing promotions and I was selling concepts to people. And this was in the sports and event space. I actually came back into Procter & Gamble and other consumer products companies selling concepts and ideas that I knew would help them in a promotional way grow their businesses. Okay. And then I left after 3 years to create Grassroots Promotions, which was more multicultural driven. And so
would you say you found a niche where you could do what you love and make money?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And so I started creating concepts, putting those blocks together, creating a package that I thought consumer products companies and other companies would want to participate in.
You thought, well, because they bought it.
Yep.
They bought them several times.
And I had to price it right, so they felt like they got a value out of what I was selling.
What kinds of things were factored into you pricing it right? And are those some of the blocks in the?
Yeah. So I would create a concept that I knew consumers would buy, and so they may be buying something on site, or they may be buying a product that was one of a P&G product. Let's use Tide or Pantene. Okay. So I would have to craft something that was linked around females, for instance, and I knew it would excite females enough that they will be loyal to a product or try a new product based on this concept that I built. Okay. Right? And so based on that concept, I would bring a retailer in. The retailer would buy the products and then from Procter and Gamble, and consumers would then buy that product from the retailer. So that 360 idea or concept made the folks want to come to my event, buy products that will link to the event, and then Procter and Gamble was happy.
So
because
for
it
the
sold
event,
products.
the machine that you built was the retail partner came in and bought a portion. The products kind of brought a portion.
Products paid for the sponsorship.
Paid for the sponsorship, and then those two together created an event or an activity that attracted, or you programmed the activity from the revenue from the other two to bring the people to the table.
Yeah. So I would, and I like to bring talent into what I'm doing. So
yes, we're going to talk about his talent too.
So imagine an entity that I create, call it the Pantene Total You Tour, and Pantene's a partner. Other brands are partners. We bring in a Brian McKnight, a Tamia, linked to a Sister Soldier, Susan Taylor from Essence Magazine, and then we have a discussion, and then a concert, and then we go and touch the products. So imagine all of that at once, and making all the consumers happy, making the retailers happy because people are buying the product.
So that machine actually generated revenue and raised awareness for the products, and so with the end in mind, right? So you saw that end game when you were assembling the story.
That's correct. I saw a room of people that were excited about being there, and touched by what was going to happen and in their experience, so much so that they would go and purchase the product because they felt the product helped them, in their emotional state.
So that's one of his talents, is being able to define the nerve that needs to be touched, and then develop in a product, an activity, an event that would connect that dot, which created some kind of a passion or response that the companies that had the product would benefit from. So you created buyers, basically. You created buyers. So entrepreneurship, going back to that was the launch. So you started off in the marketing space and the promotional space, but I know you ended up morphing, right? So the market tends to change, and this goes to the philosophy of an entrepreneur. So what made you not when the market changed and experiential marketing wasn't at the top of its game anymore? What drove you? Why didn't you just stop and go get a job?
Yeah, it's for me, it's about passion. And after a certain amount of time as an entrepreneur, you figure out the system. It's almost like, how you hear professional football or basketball players talk about, my second, third year, the game slowed down for me. And so they can see opportunities. I can know when a guy's going to move here so that I can get to the basket and score easier. But when I first started, I was just trying to go through them. And so it's almost like that, for an entrepreneur. Over time, you kind of hit a wall every now and again. So now you start learning how not to hit that wall.
Okay.
How not to make that mistake so that your trip is smoother. How do I talk to this potential client? How often do I talk to them? And so you become much more savvy and about in the way that you garner business and keep business. How you move your bank accounts, how you save dollars for a rainy day, how you bring on employees versus bring on consultants. Right. All of that matters, and you learn that through the process. Yes, trial and error. Hopefully you have a mentor that can help you through something like that. But honestly, you're out there, you're in the wilderness, you eat what you kill.
Yes, he uses the term, and I know any entrepreneur out there realizes you kill and eat every day. It's an every day. I've got to kill what I got to eat. In order to survive, I got to keep doing new things.
And I always have to be prepared to kill something.
Can you unpack that a little bit?
Yep. So if there are opportunities abound. And so you have to be prepared when an opportunity presents itself. And you're only going to be as good as what your capabilities are. Okay. So your ability to slow the game down and then see an opportunity and go for that opportunity and get it is when you've when you're able to eat. Just going after the opportunities doesn't mean anything.
So this to me was important. We talked about, is there a difference between people who have a lot of ideas, right, and the person who's a true entrepreneur? There are a lot of people, I work with a lot of small businesses and consulted them, and a lot of people walk around with a business plan and, an idea and maybe have a client and call themselves an entrepreneur, but they stay in the idea stage much longer than I would say a true entrepreneur, because an entrepreneur is trying to kill to eat, not just to walk around with the badge on that says I'm an entrepreneur. So what's the difference for you between somebody who has a lot of ideas and can do it but hasn't done it? I think there's a difference in the personality there.
Yeah, well, it's
Or is there
have you heard of
opportunity?
the term "fake it till you make it"?
Uh-huh.
And so I wouldn't say that it's necessarily a negative for people to pretend to be entrepreneurs or be a new entrepreneur.
Maybe they're just new.
Maybe
they're
new.
just new,
You,
and they're
you
trying
can
to find
ask
people
them
like
the question,
you, right, to connect with.
when is the last time you killed something? Because if you haven't killed anything, you haven't eaten. So, and if they haven't killed anything, they'll probably still have a full-time job, which is no problem. You can start off part-time, but until you kill something, you don't know what it tastes like.
That's true.
And then once you do, and you feel the desire to keep doing that.
So you felt that when you transitioned out of Procter & Gamble and got that first gig, right? Or that first contract, you understood that you had the capability to kill and eat, if you will.
I always knew I had ideas. I've had ideas since I was 10 years old.
All the time.
But having ideas and transitioning and implementing those so that you can make enough dollars to have a lifestyle is the real game. If you don't transition into profit, then you're just playing the game. You're not winning the game.
Okay, so let's talk about winning and how you have won in different arenas, right? So it's not just, I think that what we talked about earlier was that an entrepreneur is who you are. At some point, it becomes who you are. Even if you're a new entrepreneur, maybe it's after you taste it a couple times. It's almost like becoming a hunter. Once you've caught something, you realize I can, so then you start to do it better and you perfect it. So when did you feel like when you transitioned to other things, because I know he's transitioned to a couple of different industries, how do you keep yourself going?
Yeah, so 2008, 2009, for those of you who have had businesses or know, that was disaster for small businesses. A recession / depression, and typically if you had a product, people weren't buying products. You had a service, they really weren't buying services. And for large businesses, because our companies were more of the Fortune 500 companies, a multicultural budget, those are typically the first ones to go. So we're back into a corner, and I had to really decide how I take a grand scale business and diversify it. So with the experiential marketing company, Grassroots, we knew how to book talent. We knew how to source equipment. We knew how to help a small business and vendors. We know how to do a lot of things in order to prepare for a big event. And so what I did is I created several small companies so that you didn't have to go after a $2 million contract. You could go after a $50,000 contract with these separate individual businesses and still eat to live through the times.
Okay.
And so that's what we did. We were able to maintain the contract with BET. And then I created several small businesses. One of them was an HBCU consulting arm, which was HBCU Direct. I consider myself a very knowledgeable HBCU business guy.
He's a SME, and I subject matter expert in that space.
Yeah. And so since I was doing the BET Black College tour, and I saw a lot of opportunities because HBCUs, and I'm a Morehouse graduate, so I'm an HBCU graduate. They were for homecomings, they were booking talent, and the talent wouldn't show up. Yeah, so it was very devastating for the students who were expecting someone for their homecoming, especially their seniors, that didn't show up. So what's going on in that process that's causing this to happen?
Ding, opportunity.
Correct. So I knew how to book talent. I've been doing that for years. So we started off helping the schools book talent. and making fees on doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And then launched a sports team, which was an indoor football team.
Yeah.
And
I remember going to those games.
So two-time champion.
And they won. They won.
Yep,
They
two
won.
championships back to back. So that was an experience where had an opportunity to use some of the talent booking, event management in the sports arena, which is a passion for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so we built a business from that. The business was heavily funded by sponsorship. So,
Another talent that you had brought forward from
yep,
a past life.
Yep. And so we were able to, to build a business from that. The business never turned profitable. So after a while, we're killing, but we're not eating.
Mm-hmm.
We are waiting for the full meal. Have to adapt. Yep. And so, so after a while and it didn't work, then it was time to move on to a different business.
Mm-hmm.
So entrepreneurs, you're going to have successes, you're going to have failures. It's more about what did you learn through that process. And typically, since there's passion behind the work that I'm doing, I'm enjoying it, but I'm looking towards when does it turn profitable.
Right.
And you got to continuously look to that.
So
revenues minus expenses equal profit. So you got to understand your expenses to understand if you're making money.
And this goes to the entrepreneurial spirit and knowing who you are. I think maneuvering in all of those cases required that you know the talent that you were bringing forward from each lesson. Mm-hmm. So if you learned about marketing at Procter & Gamble and you learned about experiential marketing and your multicultural marketing, and then you learned about promotions, and then you learned about, sports. Like sports is a passion. This is a passion. It's like, right. So you talk sports like you speak English, but you're pulling out of self things to your blocks are in here, and then you connect them with blocks outside. Is that true? Is that how you see your process?
Yeah, that's exactly how you see it. I mean, you in a puzzle, all the blocks at some point are going to come together and they're going to make that nice puzzle. Mm-hmm. In business, you have blocks, but you don't know if they all will fit.
Okay.
And so over time, you know which ones to pull in and which ones to not pull in order to make that picture. Because there are a lot more blocks than are required for that picture.
Yeah.
And so when you're first starting out, you bring in all the blocks in.
Yeah.
Because you think they fit. And then you learn, that block doesn't fit. That's a staff person. That didn't work in this environment. Okay. So instead of holding on for them for 5 years, you find out if they fit in. You may not know that early. Mm-hmm. Oh, wow, that, I got money as a loan. But that loan is costing me so much money, mm-hmm. it's eating to the profit. Okay, so let's try not to do that again. So you learn which blocks to throw out in order to make that perfect picture. Mm-hmm. And then you think that picture can then you test it to see if it can make money.
So business is a constant evaluation of blocks and resources and people and opportunities, and just kind of constantly, for an entrepreneur, I would think, trying to see what fits and then sticking with what fits till you get to profit. Mm-hmm. And if it's something that you want to stick with, you scale it. Or what I learned from Rod constantly is, number one, how to adapt, and number two, how valuable the block building and understanding relationships to that equation is. One of the things I definitely took away from our conversations that we often have is understand who's in the room with you, understand what resources they bring to the table, and make yourself appealing enough that you have the opportunity to evaluate the blocks. Because if you don't even stay in the room long enough to evaluate who's in the room, how are you going to connect the dots to figure out whether your revenue minus your expenses is going to bring you to profit? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And at the end of the day, anybody can play basketball. Anybody can't play in the NBA. So you have to determine what level you want to end up at. Mm-hmm. And so, like I said, some people just want a small thing that they can do on the weekend. I consider an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. It may generate enough profit for you to do the little thing that you may want to do.
Create some freedom or some breathing room in your budget.
Extra things you want to purchase for Christmas, something like that. All the way up to, this is my livelihood. I have a family. I have house payments. I have all of these things I have to pay for. I have to now cover that. So is this business going to be sustainable over time to cover those things? If they're not, you're going to have difficulty in other
And
places
that's
in your
where I'm
life.
saying, like, if you're trying to get to the level where you're trying to sustain yourself, I'm not going to kick it all the way back to that person who's a weekend warrior, right? So the weekend warrior entrepreneur. You still have to, if you're selling things, need to understand yourself enough. I think we talked about this earlier.
We did.
You have to understand yourself enough to know your strengths and your weaknesses in terms of attracting new business. And that's understanding the people in the room, how you relate to the people in the room, and basically that contributes to closing the deal. So if you can't close, how can you be, you know, isn't that part of the entrepreneurial process? Is to be able to have the idea, execute, and then close the deal.
It is. In an ideal world, you're the closer.
I connect the closers.
If you find that you are not the closer, but you're the idea person, you can source a closer for your concepts and ideas. It costs money. So now
More
you
time
have
and
to,
energy.
yep, but you then have to sustain you and someone else in some form or fashion in order to close the deal. So now, as long as you can maintain the livelihood of two people, then you can be a long-term successful entrepreneur. Because now your revenue has to be higher than that other expense, which is another body, plus the other things associated with that. You probably need an office space at that point. So your expenses are going to go up. As long as that revenue can cover that, you'll be fine.
So talk to me about the partners you've had, and not necessarily. How do you find a good partner? How do you know when you have a good partner? And because that what you described is a partnership. So for an entrepreneur, what are they looking for in a partner if they need one? And have you had some? I think you've had some.
I've had partners. I've had good partners. Um, it's all about trust. When you think about a partner, you might as well be thinking about it as a marriage, because the trust level that's required, and many times is more than your spouse, because the person is attached to dollars, the person is attached to signature line, the person is that partner can make a decision that wipes away the business overnight. And so you have to be very comfortable with other people, and then very comfortable with the subject matter that they are very strong in, because those things need to be complementary
To
and
yours.
to what you are.
Okay.
You don't need two people like you. You need another person that can balance what you're doing. Um, Shared revenue. So when dollars come in, how do you split those dollars?
That's a touchy conversation, and having been through a couple of entrepreneurial partnerships, if and I go that goes back to knowing yourself. You have to be comfortable talking, having difficult conversations. And sometimes people I think an experienced entrepreneur is not the same as a newbie. I would say I'm now more comfortable talking about money and contract agreements than I was earlier, where I got burned a couple times. It was because I was afraid to say, this relationship, this marriage feels so good. It's working. We're making moves. We're making things happen, and not realizing that there's a contractual relationship as well, and waiting for that other person to bring it up. But you're saying, as an entrepreneur, having a partner, it's a fundamental part of the conversation, and it's okay to have it. But trust is huge, because if they can't talk about that, then there's probably other things they can't talk about.
And so you the way I like to do it, and a lot of entrepreneurs prefer this, is that if I'm dealing with another entrepreneur, I prefer they have their own business, so that I can maintain my liability, they can maintain their liability, but then we go shop deals together.
So that's the construct of a joint venture of sorts.
It could be sometimes you don't even need to go into a joint venture where there's one entity, which is merging them together. It's just a strategic partnership and a teaming agreement where we go after dollars together, and we know how the separation of the dollars is going to happen once the payment comes. In many instances, they may pay both of us separately,
because you come as two separate companies.
Correct.
Collaborating.
Yes.
Inspiring collaboration, igniting creativity.
Yep. Happens all the time. Happens all the time.
I think that's a viable option. I think that people should consider when you go to networking events, and it's always about giving people your card and seeing what you're doing. But maybe part of that networking should be evaluating potential partners or teaming partners where you're not losing the integrity of your business, but you're finding ways that we can collaborate to get dollars. I find that sometimes you read a lot about people who start a nonprofit every time they come up with an idea or a cause. And I've also read, I think it was in Fast Money, I'm not sure, but it's not always necessary to start a new nonprofit. Sometimes you can partner with an existing one and get more lift. Maybe that's the same thing in entrepreneurship in terms of alike businesses or complementary businesses. Maybe we can get together more. We might, have a bigger impact.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times when you're responding to RFPs, requests for proposals, there's a lead entity, but that lead person more than likely can't do everything.
Mm-hmm.
So they're bringing on subcontractors and partners to help do the work. But it looks like one unit. But
to the end user,
it looks like one unit, and that's what they care about. So you have that happening all the time, and I wouldn't say you got to go look for a partner in the business. You're looking for a partner to help finalize a contract.
Okay, so let's talk transition to the workplace and entrepreneurial mindset. I know you have had a job in the past and you understand the workplace because you've employed people. How do you define having an entrepreneurial mindset, and what's the benefit of that in the workplace?
Yeah, I mean, most entrepreneurs are seeking something. Flexibility, a way to do what I want to do from a passion standpoint, not having to deal with bosses, being able to take on my own livelihood and grow it as large as I want to without a ceiling. But that's a mindset. So it doesn't really matter where you are as long as you can accomplish those things. So if you're in the workplace and you have all of the flexibility that you want, the ability to grow, the ability to make new things within someone else's organization, you may be satisfied. And honestly, you're using your entrepreneurial spirit. You just don't have to kill in order to eat. And for most people, that's very satisfying. This is an art. This is not for everybody.
Yes, I wanted to explain the art of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, it's not for everybody. So, and some people know, I don't want that. I like to go to bed at night.
And not be worried about it.
Yeah. So if you like to sleep,
this
is not for you. Some people don't want to pay their employees, and on some instances not pay themselves.
Yes, that's an entrepreneurial risk.
Absolutely, it's a risk every time. And if you can't do that, then this is probably not for you. You hope you get a client or someone that pays you on time, so that all the things that you write, all the business plans, all the things that you put out there, you're selling products. You know the money's coming, but guess what? It's payroll this week. And the money's not there.
And we're at 30 days and the payroll has come up.
Yeah. So what do? You find a way.
Kill and eat.
You find a way to kill.
You find a way to kill.
Or borrow.
Or borrow, yeah.
So that you can make sure you maintain your employees if you have them, or pay your bills.
Right.
And so there's nothing like having $1 million on the way, but owing $200,000 today.
Wisdom.
What difference does it make that your $1 million
is on the way? I'm a manager. I have quite a few people that report to me, and I have an entrepreneurial mindset, and I have had to kill and eat, but I don't have to at the moment. But I don't feel like I've lost the desire to create, and I like the fact that it's an art, to create new products within the framework of the business structure I support. So I am constantly looking at the horizon and looking for pieces that can be assembled to add value to the business that I'm in. And so I think that for the space of work, that's the approach of connecting things, of building blocks from resources is valuable. Do you feel like that's something that should be cultivated in the workplace?
I do. And, we're in a new time. So people are working from home. People are working, in different places, and so now there's more trust in the business space than there has ever been.
That's true.
Back in the day, you used to have to come to work on time. You have to. Your bosses are sitting on top of you,
Yes, with the
making
time
sure
clock
you're at
on.
your desk. Yeah, you punching the time clock. Quite honestly, those days are gone away in most environments, and so there's a trust factor. And so you're looking for the strongest candidates that you think can get the job done, and you trust productivity versus just whether they're there. Well, that's in the entrepreneurial spirit, that environment. And so as you learn how to live in that space and be successful, you have to have discipline to do that. It's
I
just like
think
an
discipline is a
entrepreneur.
huge component of a successful entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I think once they set their mind on a target, the ones that I've been exposed to are extraordinarily committed to it. Like committed beyond distraction. Because maybe it's because it's the kill and eat mentality, but I love to see the energy that they give to the process of the chase. Because they're in it, like, and that allows them to focus really well, and that takes
Especially
discipline.
one that's been doing it for a while,
Hmm.
because you know that they're focused. You just can't tell that they're focused
Hmm.
because they've been savvy enough to have wins and losses,
Hmm.
and now they're using calculation in
Hmm.
order to determine the success of that. Think about a cheetah and an antelope.
Hmm.
They know that I used to run. I start from here, running all the way across.
Just keep running.
Never caught them, and I was so tired.
Hmm.
But over time, I creep up, I creep up, I creep up,
Hmm.
and then I'm able to pounce in a faster way.
Right.
That's wisdom that they've learned through the process. Same for an entrepreneur. You're thinking about how you do this in your mind. You know the things that are landmines, and
Hmm.
so you moving around those to get closer to what the end goal is. And the savvier you are, you can start working 5 of those at a time, 10 of those at a time, so that you're playing a numbers game in order to try to have a success at the
I think
end.
I've watched him do 3, 4, 5 of them at a time, and they're at varying stages, right? So you
Mhm.
have several businesses, and they're at different stages, and you're able to almost like whack-a-mole. Like I feel like he goes and hits one up, or does it, moves over to the next one, hits that, and it's a constant. It's almost a rhythm to the tension that you give to your different businesses to keep them moving. Is it?
Yeah.
It's art. I guess that is an art.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I write a lot. I write a lot on pads. So I have
He writes a
every
lot on
month
pads.
I write the percentage of time I expect to spend on a given task
Excuse
or a
me.
given
Could
business.
you repeat that? This is discipline.
Every month, I can look at what I think the month is going to be based on seasonality, based on opportunity, and I write down the amount of time 100%, and I break down each activity or company
Okay.
and how much time I plan to spend on that every month.
Okay.
So, for instance, the fall is very busy, so we do events for BET.
Mhm.
October, that's about 40% of my time. I
Okay.
know there's travel involved, I know there's strategy involved, and I know I'm going to be on the road.
Mhm.
So I know a lot of my time is going to be spent on that. Whereas a business that's a new business that I'm trying to launch and get off the ground, that number in October will go down to 5% because I know I don't have a lot of time and energy to spend on it, but I have to do the basic things to keep it going. Now, in November, when BT is not happening, that number goes way back down to closeout numbers, 10%.
Mhm.
Whereas
So
the
there's
other
still some
business may
maintenance
go up.
involved,
There's
but
still
it's
some
not.
maintenance. And then in December, that may go to zero. When I get into next year, as I start planning and thinking about stuff, I may tick it up to 5, 10, all the way until it's time to do something.
Do you say you do this monthly or weekly?
Monthly.
Monthly. Do you keep does that help you to train your mind to manage your time and to see the trends in patterns in the way that your businesses are growing?
It
Or
does. It does because I'm thinking 5 years out, but I'm activating this year. So my next 12 months, I can pretty much tell you what I'm thinking I want to do
Mhm.
based on things that are killed already and contracted versus things that are close
Mhm.
versus things that are just starting to blossom.
Okay.
5 years from now, that may completely flip because I expect those things that are trying to come about now to take the lead.
I think you've hit on something that's really important for people in their life is writing down and seeing what is your idea, because I think you can commit to something that you can see or that you can measure, you can touch. I think that it happens for those of us who journal. It's the same thing. You're writing out an idea so you can hold yourself accountable or check back 6 months later and say, well, I was here on this day and I'm here on this day. How have I progressed?
Yeah,
And I think that's what you're doing is checking to make sure you're constantly progressing.
that's correct. I mean, every day is different, but you need to be moving forward. And so when you find yourself, if I had something that stayed at 2% for a year, after a year, I need to reevaluate whether that's real or not. And it may be wipe it away. Something else can take that time. Or you need to be putting more effort into that by doing a certain thing.
Is there any other habit that you would say is important that you've learned over the course of entrepreneurship?
I think so. I get up and act like I'm going into an office every day, whether I am
Does
or
that
not.
mean you take a shower and get dressed?
I take a shower and I get dressed every day. I am prepared for whatever may happen every day.
Every day. That contributes to your mindset, right?
I'm ready to go every day. As long as the day requires.
I have a question. Your personal brand. I know you're in marketing. I know you understand the power of a brand. Do you think it's important for entrepreneurs to have a personal brand or something that they are identified by?
Whether you have your own personal brand or not, you're identified by something.
Yeah.
So outsiders will either create your brand for you or you will craft your brand yourself. Now, whether you market that brand is up to you. So I have
let me step back. What does brand mean? Because I know brand means a lot of things.
So just think about product me. I am my brand. I have the qualities of me, myself, that I share to the world. Think about I am Coca-Cola and I want someone to purchase Coca-Cola. So, but I am my own brand manager who determines how people see me, what I taste, feel, sound like, so that the world will accept me as what I'm trying to put out there.
Okay.
So if I think that I'm a flavored juice and I am not
water, it's water,
and I'm just water. So yeah, but the water, if the world sees me as water, that's a problem with my brand.
Because it's an inconsistency.
Correct.
It's a disconnect.
Yes. So how you build, it's almost like how you build your reputation. I am crafting a brand, and so based on that brand, I want certain things to happen, which is why I have not
Would you
put
say
it out to the
your
world.
Brand attracts business? I mean, and I'm saying there's a brand like here's my logo and my colors, and that's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying your personal brand that is an extension of your habits, an extension of your strategic partnerships, because people learn you and they refer you based on their experience with you. So, are you intentional about that brand, or do you just be?
I am. It's always intentional, even when you become savvy at it, because at that point you are who you are. But when you're first starting out, it's very important for people to, at the end of the day, you want people to trust what you're saying.
Trust is huge.
And you got to deliver what you said you were. Then you build more trust. If you do that enough, that's who you are. And that's what people will see. You never know. This world is very small. You're often asked for referrals. And the people, believe me, they will tell you, and they will tell other clients how they feel about you.
Yes, they will.
You never know how that's going to affect.
And you won't know whether you got a job or not got a job because of something. And that's why I go back to you have to know yourself, know how you are perceived, not just how you want to be perceived. You got to check in every now and then and make sure that what you are putting out is what you're getting back. Yeah. So I just wanted to kind of ask you one last question. What would you tell your younger self?
What would I tell my younger self?
To get to where, if they were looking at you now and like, oh, I want to be that person, what would you tell them that would maybe make it easier?
Um, so I listen to a lot of music.
Yes.
And
You
so
do.
I'm a hip hop fan.
Yes.
I am hip hop.
Yes.
So
Yes.
a lot of the things that I listen to, I pull out little segments or little things that people say in their music, and a lot of times that inspires me.
I seen an Eiffel.
Yep. So 2 Chainz, right now has a song, and in one of the songs, it says, "Believe in yourself. Who else gonna believe in you?"
Mhm.
So that's on this new Pretty
Believe
Girls
in
Like Trap
yourself.
Music.
Pretty girls like trap music by
Yep.
2 Chainz.
2 Chainz. The song is called Rolls Royce B.
And there's wisdom in that song, which is believe in yourself because ain't nobody else. And that's what you would tell your younger self.
Mm-hmm.
Believe in yourself.
Because at some point, sometimes you don't trust it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you got all the answers. You think you got everything, and something doesn't happen, and so you start doubting yourself, and then you have to pull yourself up by your bootstraps because you're going to hit walls.
Mm-hmm.
But I would tell my believe in yourself. When I started this, I do it a couple of years, 2 years, 3 years, whatever. I go back and get a job. It doesn't work out.
Right. Look at you 17 years later,
Yeah.
making things happen.
And
Believe in
still
yourself.
enjoying it.
Yeah, he does. He really does. Honestly, we talk all the time. Again, You Me Connections wasn't the intent was to be able to share some of my friends with you, and because they're just incredible, and they're very wise, and they've had a great deal of experience. But the nugget that we're taking away from today is believe in yourself. I hope that there's a lot of little truths that kind of came out, or some puzzle pieces that connected for you today. But I'm sure I'll have another conversation with you. I'll pick another topic, or maybe you guys can share what you'd like to hear from him, and we'll talk about that next time. So thank you for joining me, Rod. It was a
Thank you very
pleasure,
much.
and we'll
See
see
you
you
next
soon.
time.
Thanks for visiting you.